Some of you are probably here this morning for the keynote speeches, and there's some really excellent ones this morning. The one that stands out to me, and I guess what my presentation aligns with most closely, was the one from Professor Sarah Hennessy, who emphasised, I guess, the critical place of nature in the future of our cities. All around the world, there's a growing recognition of the detrimental impacts of urban design, traditional forms of urban design on our local environments and on our living spaces, and recognition that bringing more nature back into the city and designing more with nature can help to address those issues. Water-sensitive urban design, water-sensitive design and green infrastructure, or sometimes referred to as green-blue infrastructure, particularly overseas, emphasises the way to build with nature to benefit cities and our societies. There's an abundance, actually, of research evidence and other evidence that reshaping urban environments to provide more nature into them delivers multiple social, economic and environmental benefits that actually align quite closely with, I guess, the aims and aspirations of individuals, communities, governments and businesses across the board. So if we look at some of the attributes of green-blue infrastructure, I'll refer to it sometimes, but they tend to be extremely people-friendly compared to traditional forms of infrastructure, and they tend to be more ecologically, I guess, beneficial. They're much more activity-friendly. There's a lot of evidence of the, I guess, particularly around the greening aspects, linking to walkable areas. The greener areas tend to be those that are more frequented, more walkable, or more locally friendly. They're commercially attractive places to own a home in or to build in. People tend to stop and congregate in those areas, so they're commercially attractive, more biodiverse. Water, particularly stormwater, but across the board, water is better managed through water-sensitive design and greening, and there are significant health and wellbeing benefits. Some of that, a lot of the evidence is fairly qualitative, but there is some quantitative evidence as well. And they tend to be more climate resilient. So if we think of, we heard this morning a little bit about the urban heat island effect, which is going to become, I guess, that plus increased urban temperatures. So cooler environments, local environments, and opportunities to help mitigate the impacts of flooding can be addressed through good design of water-sensitive design and bringing greening into environments. And there is quite a lot of evidence now emerging of opportunities for lower life cycle costs. It's not always the case, but that will be determined. But certainly there's quite a few projects where life cycle costs have been demonstrated to be quite a lot lower than traditional forms of infrastructure. The government's clearly recognised for some time the advantages of water-sensitive design approaches. At the state level, we have the water-sensitive urban design policy was released in 2013, late 2013, and that advocates, there's a number of actions which advocate for eventual mainstreaming, I guess, of water-sensitive urban design within South Australia. So it's a statewide policy. And the 30-year plan for Greater Adelaide certainly has a strong emphasis on the benefits of greening. There's some targets around canopy cover, tree canopy cover, for example, and water-sensitive urban design. The current government has a clear emphasis on the need for greening our neighbourhoods. And linkers, and importantly, they've linked the benefits of greener neighbourhoods to a range of other outcomes, objectives of government: growing the economy, healthier state, stronger communities, more inclusiveness within societies, more livable cities and regions, and protecting the environment. There is a policy to introduce Green Adelaide. and in the Adelaide region, and that will and they've indicated that will include priorities for increased urban greening, water-sensitive urban design, improve waterways, and to improve coastal health. And there are quite a few, I mean, there are many other priorities of government and policies, but one that springs to mind is the opportunity to support the government's agenda for preventative health. So given the, I guess there's quite significant qualitative evidence of the benefits of green and blue infrastructure, one might think that we might, for example, look to design an urban landscape, something like this, in terms of, this is just one of obviously an infinite number of possible opportunities, but this is a case of an instance of a mall, for example, a lot more greening. This example is actually from Mendoza in Argentina, which I visited a couple of times, but as well as the green infrastructure throughout the city, they've got often open drains, fairly aesthetically pleasing open drainage systems throughout the city, and they feed their trees. During the summer, at least, when I've been there, the environment has been very similar to Adelaide's. A lot of watercourses are dry, but the health and condition of the green infrastructure is really quite impressive. So that might be something we would aspire to, that level of greening. And often that's, I guess, thought about in the conceptual stages of projects, but potentially, you know, as the project progresses, some of those elements tend to be cut out and we end up with more grey infrastructure, emphasis on grey infrastructure. So this is an example actually from the UK. I'm not using any local Adelaide examples here, but I guess it shows the other extreme to which one may end up with. And some other quick examples, water-sensitive urban design rain gardens. Nadine put up some slides. This one I think is in the United States, but there are many examples and some great work being done by some of the local councils in getting rain gardens and other water-sensitive features into the streets. And another one from Mendoza in Argentina, just showing some of the canal systems they've got running through the streets, which are often quite dry in summer. So although Adelaide actually compares pretty well in some areas in terms of greening and water-sensitive urban design is being picked up by quite a few councils, there is still a lot of urban landscapes which look something like this. So that's Keswick Creek, or like this, where the suburbs, particularly I guess some of the western suburbs, this is an example of one of the western suburbs, where a streetscape looks like this. There's no greening, no water-sensitive urban design features whatsoever, and pretty hot and dry during the summer. And one of the reasons, I guess, the object of the work I've been doing is to try and develop a Monetised Benefits Tool to help water-sensitive urban design, investments in water-sensitive urban design and green infrastructure stack up a little bit more. So there is a risk, of course, that without having a process in place to at least articulate some of the benefits in a monetary manner, that some of the project finances in some cases will end up leaving greening and water-sensitive features out of their designs, or cutting them out as the projects progress and they're resource constrained. So I guess the objects of this exercise started in 2015, linking back to one of the actions in the state government's water-sensitive urban design policy, was to develop a decision support tool around, for WUSA in particular, to monetise some of the benefits, to have a public infrastructure focus. So the initial concept was to develop a tool that could be potentially picked up by state agencies in developing infrastructure projects, but later on it was realised that there may be some opportunities as well for working with councils and maybe the interest amongst councils in such a tool. A tool which suits a variety of projects and different stages of projects. So initially we were thinking of conceptual stages of projects before they've even gone up for approval. but we realised that they could be used at later stages of projects. So in terms of the process, we initially looked at some elements, water quality and flow attenuation linked to the government's water-sensitive urban design policy, developed an Microsoft Excel tool and tested that, and subsequently we augmented the water quality and flow attenuation modules within the tool to consider. We looked at whether we might be able to include health and wellbeing, property values and some other areas. Some of that we've actually picked up on. So I guess the modules in the final product are a coastal water quality improvement, so reduce suspended solids and nitrogen. Runoff attenuation is a component of it. That work was done by a resident economist in our department at the time. Health, we've incorporated within the tool an indicative assessment of medical cost savings, so linking greening, linking different types of evidence, greening to levels of obesity and overweight within the community in close to green areas versus less green areas, and some discrete research which has been done by others on what that means in terms of private medical costs. Another one which we looked at was reduced mortality potential. So green infrastructure, those that live in green infrastructure, there's a higher association with levels of physical activity and lower mortality rates. So we linked those together, and we fortunately have some information from the Commonwealth on what they regard as a value of a life, which we've used to monetise some of those health benefits. And another one which we've called enhanced neighbourhood character or neighbourhood character, which is really using hedonic pricing, property values uplift as a surrogate measure for people's willingness to pay to live in greener, nicer environments. I'll be the first to admit the tool's not perfect. It's quite a simplistic tool. Many of the benefits, I've only mentioned a few, but there's a plethora of benefits, too long to mention, which haven't been captured by the tool. Some evidence base for various modules in the tool are stronger than others, and there's some key assumptions. But I guess that some of the strengths are that there is some local evidence which has been included where we've been able to. It's fairly conservative overall, which is my opinion, but it's transparent. So it's documentation. We've documented evidence which has been used, the assumptions, default values, and so forth. So just wrapping up, late last year we undertook an initial trial of the tool with the City of Onkaparinga and involving the NRM board. So it involved a streetscape upgrade at Moreton Road in Christie's Downs, near Christie's Beach High School. It's about 300 metres long road upgrade involving various greening and water-sensitive design features. And really one of the drivers was to reduce socio-economic disadvantage in the area. So it's the first real-world trial, I guess, of the tool. The data we found was readily available within the council, which was fantastic. The physical activity potential, which was calculated using the tool, was a very significant component of the total benefit that was calculated. About 70%, over 70% of the benefit was due to potential health improvements due to physical activity, and over 80% was for total combined health improvement, which is the physical activity and potential to reduce obesity by greening areas. And the derived net present value benefits also exceeded the cost by quite a significant margin. The report's in its final draft, so I can't really go through the numbers because some of those may change marginally, but the cost versus, the benefits over the cost were probably about 2-to-1 ratio. So where to from here? We're looking to potentially further trial the tool. Some councils are interested in trialling the tool, and some state agencies are also interested in trialling the tool, including SA Water with Greg Ingleton. Further information is available if you'd like some information from me on request. So the tool's available. It's open to others to use and use and abuse as you wish to. Change some of the values within it. The evidence base is there, but I guess for the future, the water-sensitive CRC for water-sensitive cities integrated research project 2, their second one of their main projects at the moment, is to look at improving economic valuation. So they have a copy of the tool. It still remains to be seen what their tools and products will look like when they come out with them, but they have the information which I've used as the basis of this tool. So hopefully the future's quite bright. And just some acknowledgements at the end there for those who have been involved.